Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the Conscious Courage Podcast. I am Davone'a, your host. All right, this month of January, first off, Happy New Year. We are watching all of the videos that you all viewed the most, okay? Our top 4 most watched videos. Coming in as number 3 is the discussion that I had with licensed professional counselor, Mrs. Chivon Gray. It was focused all on our internal dialogue and healing our most inner self, healing our inner child. Such a great conversation, many nuggets she gave to adults that are living with open wounds from childhood, and also parents and how they can communicate and talk with their children. She has books, she has videos. Y'all listen in and connect with her for additional wisdom and insight. I will see you all next week to finalize this here recap session that we have. And the next episode is all about attachment styles. So I will see you there. If you're used to seeing me every single Monday, well, come February, y'all, you will only see me every first and third Monday. We'll try something new to get you some more interviews, to get you some additional behind the scenes, etc., etc. But that's all for February. So stick around and listen to this discussion with licensed professional counselor, Mrs. Chivon Gray.
We think about growing up as children, the voice that you hear the most is the domineering parent or caregiver. And if you were raised in an environment where that person was often critical or dismissive, then that voice is your voice. And children don't necessarily understand the concept of having a conscience. That's very abstract. So when they are trying to learn to differentiate their inner voice from the loudest voice that they're hearing, which is their caretaker, it gets muddled. That's not something developmentally that children are able to do until you get much older. So if you can imagine the voice of criticism or the voice of abuse or the voice of dismissal constantly speaking to you, you adopt that. So having self-compassion can be a challenge. It can be a challenge to work through what doesn't serve you any longer.
Good morning. Welcome to the Conscious Courage Podcast, and sing it with me. Happy Motivational Monday. I am your host, Davone'a. I meet with you all every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to provide practical steps toward our inner healing journey, or what I've coined internal glow up. Whether you're here as a first-time listener or returning, thank you for tuning in. The team and I are grateful to every subscriber via YouTube and every listener via Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. With a special shout out to all of our IGU babes keeping up with us on social media on all platforms at CC Podcast with DT. Y'all are locked in, and we are too hyped to have you here, all right? Now, ensure to listen on through so you can receive those practical steps as well as any announcements that we may have. Let's dive on into today's episode. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Conscious Courage Podcast. I am your host, Davone'a, and I bring you brand new content every single Monday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time via YouTube, as well as audio streaming platforms, as I already went over in the introduction that preceded this here episode. And I don't want to waste no time, y'all, because we are deep diving into our inner healing, specifically healing our inner child with Mrs. Chivon Gray. Now, let me tell y'all a little bit about her before we get started, because it's just too good not to share. She is a licensed professional counselor for over a decade, y'all. So we have a subject matter expert here with us. Her journey into counseling began with a passion for working with children who have emotional needs. Originally aspiring to become a psychiatrist, she shifted her focus to counseling during her sophomore year of college due to some physical challenges. This pivot led her to discover a natural affinity for psychology, ultimately earning her a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a Master of Arts in Community Counseling. After completing her education, Mrs. Gray gained invaluable experience working in a case management with chronically mentally ill and homeless individuals, especially in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Thank you for your service there. She also worked with families striving to reunite with their children, confirming her dedication to making a meaningful difference in people's lives. Throughout her career, she has been driven by a deep seated desire to be a safe space for others, particularly children. Recognized for her maturity and grounded nature from a young age, she attributes her counseling abilities to spiritual gifts of encouragement as well as faith. Her practice often focuses on helping clients become aware of unrealistic expectations that they hold for themselves and for others, addressing communication patterns and fostering effective communication, things that we've touched on the Conscious Courage podcast. One of the most rewarding aspects of her work is discipleship, where she guides clients seeking healing through the Word of God. Mrs. Chivon Gray views her role as a kingdom assignment, walking alongside believers as they learn to practically walk out their faith. In addition, y'all, to her counseling practice, she is a certified case manager. She is trained in mind and body skills techniques and a licensed Zubini instructor. I will need you to, one, make sure I said that right, and two, we're going to explain what that is because that's new to me. She is also the author of my calming book, I Am Calming Me, a children's activity book designed to foster caregiver attachment while teaching mood awareness through skill building techniques. Y'all, we are going to explore this journey and the profound impact of her healing and professional growth. Welcome, Mrs. Chivon Gray, to the Conscious Courage podcast.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. I'm like, oh, I've done a lot. God has truly carried me. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm grateful that you're here. I was like, oh, I love this. I'm getting chills reading it. Like I read through it prior to, I'm like, okay. But reading it again, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So thank you for being here. Is there anything that you want to add before I jump into some questions that you didn't?
That is it hits different when you hear it coming from someone else. It has certainly been a journey, and I love people. I love healing. I love helping to heal. I'm healing. I think that we are always healing if we're aware. And so today I'm just excited to talk with you about what that looks like, how to practically walk out healing.
I love it. So our particular section or segment of the healing our inner child, excuse me, for the month of July is self-compassion as well as inner dialogue. And I'm like, ooh, this is so good. Mm-hmm. So can you just share your understanding of self-compassion and the importance in the process of inner healing as well as personal growth?
Sure. When I think about self-compassion, the word that comes to mind is grace. Grace is giving a gift that you don't necessarily deserve, right? And when I think about self-compassion, it's the gift that we need to give ourselves to be kind and to be tender. Lots of times we don't feel that we deserve that. I think that we can be our loudest critic. And when we think about inner dialogue, or when we think about growing up as children, the voice that you hear the most is the domineering parent or caregiver. And if you were raised in an environment where that person was often critical or dismissive, then that voice is your voice. And children don't necessarily understand the concept of having a conscience. That's very abstract. So when they are trying to learn to differentiate their inner voice from the loudest voice that they're hearing, which is their caretaker, it gets muddled. That's not something developmentally that children are able to do until you get much older. So if you can imagine the voice of criticism or the voice of abuse or the voice of dismissal constantly speaking to you, you adopt that. So having self-compassion can be a challenge. It can be a challenge to work through what doesn't serve you any longer.
Ad break. Are you seeking an electrifying speaker to ignite transformation in your audience? Well, look no further. Hi, I'm Davone'a Touche, real estate investor, Air Force veteran, and host of the Conscious Courage podcast, where new episodes are released every Monday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time via YouTube and all streaming audio platforms. I specialize in delivering impactful keynote speeches that inspire change and elevate your minds. Whether it's a virtual gathering or an in person event, I bring passion, expertise, and a unique delivery to every arena or every environment that I'm in. Let's captivate your audience together and create an unforgettable experience. Contact me today to book your next event, and let's embark on this journey of transformation, or let's get all of your attendees on this journey toward internal glow up. You can book me via my website by going to www.davoneatouche.com. I'll spell that for you. It is www.DAV as in Victor, ONEATASHAE.com. I look forward to connecting with you. Take care.
That is so good. And I think about when I was, I don't know, like 8, 9, something, somewhere in that age group. And I'm the eldest in my family. I grew up the eldest of 5, at least at that time. And I would go off to see my dad, and then I'd come back home and I'd hear about my mom and my siblings and like everything that they did while I was away. And I would internalize that as, oh, they have more fun and enjoyment when I'm not around. No one said this. No one even gave me that impression whatsoever, but that was my own inner dialogue to myself for some odd reason. And I don't even know. Like, I think about that now that I'm older and I'm a lot more aware. Like, what would even give me that frame of thought? And I'm sure they never would have thought saying like, oh, Day, my family called me Day Day. Oh, Day or Day Day, this is what we did while you were away, would somehow internalize to they don't need me here, or it's a better time when I'm not here. So that is, I don't know, just the mind in itself. So is there any like tips that you can give to a parent on how we don't want parents to tiptoe and walk on eggshells around their children, but just like some additional insight?
Well, I think for you, just becoming aware that that was a thought that was causing a uneasy feeling. Most of the time, what signals to us that there may be something going on that needs to be explored is the emotion. And then once we face the emotion, then we can focus in on, well, when did I feel that emotion? And then we have a situation and that we can work through. And so parenting is really all about growing up yourself. The parent has to grow as the child grow, and children mirror. They mirror us. I have 4. They mirror me all the time. They show me where I still need to grow, but they also help me to grow. And so just being able to communicate with your child. I think in the case that you just described, you come from a large family. So we think about family dynamics, and each child has a role, whether that role was placed upon them, maybe the oldest to be the parent, or if it was something they just kind of fell into, because there are roles that we play in families. So just parents being aware, having sit down time to talk with your child, especially if you are co-parenting or someone else is helping. And even if you aren't co-parenting, when a child goes over to a friend to stay a night, or when they go away, college kids going home and then coming back and realizing, oh, my room isn't there anymore. or where I used to sit at the dinner table, now someone has taken that spot.
Mm.
Feelings are tender. And so just being able to communicate to your children why they may feel a certain way, asking open-ended questions, an example of that might be, do you want to know what we did while you were away? Or we missed you. Next time, maybe we can do this. What is something you want to do when we're all together? And that
Mm.
way it could help a kid feel still included.
That's so good. Yes, I said I had to buy one of those little machines so I can hit the clap and or hit some snaps. That is so good. Thank you. Now, how does that inner dialogue, because we started off with that a little bit, how does that inner dialogue impact our self-perception and like our overall well-being, if we can unpack that some more? Because you started off discussing that.
Sure. Um, I feel that inner child is a term that we're hearing more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is such a call and a push to heal, because we see that stress and trauma, it isn't going anywhere. This is something that we need to deal with. And the sooner we become aware that we are affected with this, then the more likely we can put some things into place to help us in those different seasons where things are really, really tough. So just thinking about inner dialogue and how it's constantly with us. This isn't something that we're not doing. I just think that we're not aware that we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a voice or thoughts where we're just ruminating. You're thinking throughout the day. You have so many thoughts that you're not even aware of, but it is actually affecting your day-to-day life. And so the practice of being mindful, about what you're thinking, why you're thinking it, and if the thought is causing more harm, then it's a good idea to sit with that and say, what is it that I can change about the way I am thinking about this? What perspective should I adopt? What perspective should I keep? What perspective should I do away with? And I think having good friends, having good friends to talk things through a lot help people to understand, well, maybe I do need to change this thought.
Mm-hmm.
Being aware of the feeling that comes from the thought is another way to check in with yourself with the inner dialogue that's happening. If it's not causing pleasant feelings, and everything isn't going to be pleasant, but if you find that you're feeling very depressed, you're feeling very anxious, and you're doing more thinking than acting, then you're kind of stuck, in that particular area. So I just think being mindful about what you're thinking, why you're thinking, and how it's causing you to feel is a good way to check in with inner dialogues.
That is amazing. Yes. Like the mindfulness, that was something I started when I've gone and seen a counselor and we were breaking some things down just so I had a better understanding of myself and mindfulness. And she's like, you just have to be conscious of your thoughts. And like you just said, conscious of the thoughts and then how that's translating into an emotion and even further into a potential action. And so now if I feel my body, and sometimes I have to work backwards because I may not be conscious of the thought, but I have the feeling like, oh, my stomach is tight or my hands are clammy or I feel anxious. Okay, wait, let me work backwards. Why? Why is this emotion arising? Oh, okay, well, I had this thought. Well, what was the thought? Well, the thought is X.
Yeah.
Well, all right, now let me unpack that thought. Is that true? Is there any facts behind that? Or did I just make that up based on a previous experience or et cetera, et cetera? So I think that is so, so, so profound and good. And I hope that as we continue to talk and people tune in to the Conscious Courage podcast and anywhere else, that they do the work
Right.
because it's beneficial.
I think what you said just right at the end, that doing the work is beneficial. It can be scary, especially when you know that you've dealt with so many things in your life, when you've overcome so many struggles. And some people feel that they haven't overcome much. They feel that they are still stuck in it, but it's known. And as uncomfortable as that may feel, it's still comfortable because it's known. So healing is work. Healing is a journey. but oh my goodness, the benefits that come from it, it can't be measured. You also mentioned about what you feel, how your body responds.
Mhm.
One of the wonderful things about mindfulness is that you do get a chance to understand the response that your body has to stress. And God is awesome in the way He has created us to be able to do something about it. When I work with individuals on mindfulness, there are some things that we do so that they can become aware. Sounds like your person was doing that with you as well, becoming aware that your body does hold the score, and all that means is your body will react to thoughts even if you're not aware of the thoughts. Your
Mhm.
body will react to emotions even if you're not aware of the emotions. So mindfulness gives you the opportunity to be in the present, and then it gives you the opportunity to do something different. It's very empowering.
It is. Okay, I want to share this, and then my question will be if you can give us like an example of when you are helping someone or coaching someone through that mindfulness. So this is what I heard, and it could have been, I don't know, I'm not gonna make up something. I heard this. And they were saying that our mind is a computer, and as you mentioned, the way God has created us, this computer is just phenomenal.
Mhm.
However, the only limp fact in our brain is that it can't tell the difference between the reality and when you're just kind of making up the thought. So when you're making up that you're angry, when you're making up that you're fearful, or excuse me, that you are fearful in that moment, it can't tell. Like when people might say, like, oh, I hate this, or I'm so angry right now, or whatever, they could just feel that in. The brain is like, oh, well, right now I'm angry. Even if they didn't technically mean it, it's like, well, now let me respond with the
Mhm.
emotion of anger. And that in itself is consciousness. I think when people become more aware, not also like not just what the feeling and emotion is and the mindfulness of it, but hey, this brain here literally will take what you're saying to it and then produce something, even if that's not what you intended
Yes.
for it to do.
Mhm.
It just like automate it and just do it. Oh, that's a code. Now I have to push this out. So that's so good. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this conversation. But when you, if you want to expound on that, please do. But my next question is, if you would just walk us through what that mindfulness practice may look like.
I can remember growing up, my mom would say things like, if we are running around the house or, we make a mistake, she'll correct us in a way. She will say, you need to be more mindful.
Mm,
So growing up, mindful meant you need to pay attention to what you're doing, right? But it still means the same thing. So when we talk about being mindful or being or practicing mindfulness, it only means that we are stopping to focus on thoughts, feelings, sensations, objects. We are
mm,
intentionally focusing on them. So we're not running through it. You know how you might have a to-do list and you just kind of run through the list? No, when we are mindful or when we're practicing mindfulness, we want to take a moment to focus. And some of the best exercises to do that are meditative practices. And what that does is, I'm going to use my hand as a diagram. So when I'm working with kids, we think about the brain here, right?
mm,
And then we think about this. And all of this is your lizard brain. So if this is your brain, this is that brain stem, and
mm,
everything in that lizard brain controls reactions. And those reactions are involuntary, right? You don't have to think to breathe. You don't have to think to run if you are in danger. It is something that is going to automatically happen. You don't have to tell your heart to pump blood. You don't have to tell your lungs to breathe. You don't have to say any of that. It is
mm,
wired in us. And so when we practice mindfulness, what it does is it helps our brain to recognize that it does not need to be afraid. That all of the alarm systems that went off because that girl may have given you a mean stare,
mm.
it's not the same thing as you having to, you know, run away from a dog.
Fight or flight.
Yeah, yeah. You don't, it doesn't have to do that, but it will. It it,
Mhm.
it will. And so when you are practicing mindfulness, you get the opportunity to tell your body that you are in control. that it is nothing to be worried about, and that you can come back into a state of balance. And so we teach meditation. And so meditation is just, in a very simple way of just saying it, is being still and thinking deeply. And some of the ways that we do that, we can concentrate on visualizing something that is beautiful, something that makes us feel safe. We can use our imaginations, which is what we do when we are doing guided meditation. But then there are also other types of meditation that we call expressive modes of meditation. A really good example that those of us who grew up in a Black church would understand is when you open up church service with a hymn that is very very low in tone, and you notice people are swaying back and forth, and then there's a prayer that may go forth, and people may still be swaying back and forth, but then when that organ chord is hit, and people's hands go up in the air, and the drums go, and you begin to move, all of that is expressive meditation. You know, there's a reason why you feel so good doing worship service. You know, there's a reason why it can become addictive. You know, I just got to get to church. I just got to get to church. Sometimes we just go to church for the worship service and not pay attention to the word, which is not what we're supposed to do. But that's what a lot of times that's what happens. And so you can take those same practices and do that at home. You know, you can. I'm a big proponent of filling your environment with music. I love to dance. No rhythm, but I'm going to dance. I'm going to move my body because it releases what is stuck on the inside, and it tells your brain that you're safe. It also feels good. You know, it also feels good. So meditative practices is a wonderful way, or wonderful ways to actually engage in mindfulness.
That was, where the claps? I gotta get that clap. Okay, bring the horns. Excellent. And I want to just highlight just the moving piece, like you said. And so if someone is watching this, who knows, maybe a child would even come across this video, or an adolescent, excuse me, just move around and let it out. Just get it out of your system. That is good. And because you think, well, I wouldn't say you think, nowadays in this world, you may hear mindfulness, but it's a different kind of mindfulness. And their humming and hemming and sound bowls and everything else is not what we're talking about here. So I want to underscore that this is a healthy, wholesome mindfulness that we are discussing on the Conscious Courage podcast. Everything else, we rebuke that in the name of Jesus. Okay. So there are some common patterns or negative beliefs that can arise in our inner dialogue. And how can we cultivate the awareness and compassion towards those negative thoughts, like welcoming them, letting them pass on through, acknowledging them, but without acting on them?
So I love how you just described that, acknowledging it, letting it pass on through. In the psych world, we call those cognitive distortions. So cognitions are thoughts, and distortions are anything that's not based in reality. And we all have them. This is human nature. We all have them. But when you are aware that these thoughts are not helping you to become the healthier version that you're attaining to be, it's not helping you in your relationship with yourself or with others, then it's worth some time to sit down with that. So some of those things might be all or nothing thinking. You know, it could be catastrophizing, you know, woe is me, the world is coming to an end if I don't get this job, or overgeneralizing, everyone is like this, or no one loves me, even discounting the positives in your life. And so some of the ways that you can work through that is acknowledging how you feel. I think being able to pinpoint the emotion is one of the easier ways to do it. Emotions are felt. You know, it's not anything that you're imagining. So feelings are very real, but sometimes they're not right. You know, sometimes the feeling comes because you have some faulty thinking that's happening, right? So we don't necessarily want to tell someone they're wrong for feeling the way they feel. God has gifted us with feelings, right? But we do want to understand what's causing the feeling. And so journaling is a wonderful way to start to track when you may be dealing with panic situations or panic attacks or anxiety. When you feel that your mood is going down, sometimes you might not notice it. You just realize, wait, I feel bad, or I haven't gone out with my friends in for 3 weekends. What's really going on? And so when you journal, it allows you to keep a record, and that way you can go back, you can work through some things, talking about it with someone who you trust, and then if you're not comfortable with sharing some of those deeper thoughts or deeper feelings, because you're the one that other people come to. I find that a lot. If you're the one that other people come to, you don't really feel that you can go and share. You don't want to be a burden. But even that is a distortion. I don't want to be a burden. I'm the one that everyone comes to. But you can also frame it or reframe the thought by saying, if my friend was sharing this feeling with me, what advice would I give her?
Yes.
So and that just flows back into being compassionate with yourself, giving yourself grace, acknowledging that you are human as well, even if you're everybody else is human, who they use to pour out, that we have to pour back into ourselves. So recognizing, sometimes people say stinking thinking, but all those are cognitive distortions, things that with a greater perspective, we can change the way we view ourselves and the world.
Excellent. So this is a question that I didn't have here, but while you were talking, I was like, ooh, I want to bring this up, and I know you're going to knock it out the park. So I did a topic in April, and it was talking about some of our experiences as children, and from the time of consumption on up through that 9 to 10 years old, our experiences. I won't say, well, I will say, like they mold us in a sense, and they show up when we are where I am now, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, 40s, there is still that inner child that can show up with those inner child wounds and those areas that still hurt, or areas that weren't addressed, or even the happy child. For my birthday, I bought some dinosaur oatmeal because as a kid, I would eat that oatmeal and it just made me happy. And so I wanted to make my inner child happy. But focusing on those experiences from the time of conception through adolescence that can still show up in our world today, or as we progress on up in age. Can you talk on that? I didn't, I mean, that's pretty vast, but
I can definitely talk on it. I think one of the reasons that I love to work with children and their parents is because I understand the value of having your needs met as a baby. And so sometimes we think that children, because they can't speak, because they don't have a large vocabulary, that things don't affect them because they can't tell us that how it affects them. So we see behavior, and then we label, oh, that's a bad kid, or in our community, words like, oh, he's so mannish, or she's so womanish. But all of these behaviors are a way that children communicate. And oftentimes when a child's needs aren't met in the infant stage, then you see that show up in later stages of development, and the child is maybe stuck. But you also see it in adulthood. You see it play out in different relationships. You had talked about attachment styles, and what happens during that time. But it is certainly something that we see and that we deal with. And I think it's human nature as well, because stress is here and trauma is here. And as parents or caregivers, we don't always bring our best selves because we're also human. And so it is important to know that there are wounds that we all deserve to have healed. And oftentimes when we find out that we're wounded, it's okay to acknowledge it, but we don't want to stay there. We don't want to not necessarily play the role of the victim, because you were in that sense, but be empowered to do something about it now. So we can reparent ourselves. That's a term that's used when someone is going through inner child work. We can do just what you did. Go buy the oatmeal that you love so much. Go swing on the swing at your favorite park that you may not have gotten a chance to go to because mom had to work, or because maybe some dangerous situation was happening there, and it wasn't necessarily used as a park for children. But being able to acknowledge what happened, to know that what you're feeling is real. If you were abandoned, yes, you have some trust concerns. If you were the one who had to make everything happen, you were the oldest child, mom was working or dad wasn't there, and now maybe you don't want to have children because you're all parents out. All of those things, those are valid feelings, or valid reasons to be stuck, but not valid enough to stay there when you recognize that this is not allowing you to be the full self that you desire to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was so good. I said she gonna knock it out the park, and she did. Okay, thank you for that. Can you recommend any resources or exercises to the listeners that can explore their deeper understanding of self-compassion and inner dialogue? You've already dropped so many gems. Are there any additional gems you have hidden away?
Sure. I love to keep things simple. There are hundreds of books on healing, self-help, inner child. But as a Christian, um, and I'm not knocking self-help books, but the Bible um, is my book.
Yeah.
And so when I think about the scripture that I knew as a little girl, it would probably be John 3:6. For God so loved the world, right? And so for me, if God loved me enough to send me his son, then I know that I'm loved. Even if I don't necessarily feel loved in the situation that I'm in as a kid, right? So that was the very first scripture I can recall, knowing by memory and being able to hold on to. And then as I got older, I progressed. So now as an adult woman, I am all about Jeremiah 29 and 11. And not just staying at the 11, but knowing that this was a word of promise that was given to God's people because they had done wrong. But even in that, he didn't forget about them, right?
Right.
So then lets me know that I may have to pay a price for some of the behaviors or my actions. There may be a consequence, but God is still merciful and he still has a plan for my life. And then when my controlling nature may come in, because I am a recovering perfectionist. I am. I think about Romans 8 and 28 and 29, and knowing that all things are working for me. So I shouldn't wait too long to move. If I've prayed about a thing and I feel like God has told me to do a thing, then I have scriptures that I can base my life on. But even vision boarding, going to the Dollar Tree or the Dollar General and getting a poster board, tearing out some pages from a magazine, envisioning what I want my life to look like in each area. What do I want my spiritual life to look like? What do I want my physical life to look like? My relationships with my husband or wife or my parents or my siblings. Make visioning that out. All of those things still help. It still helps. I know we've been doing that for many years, but when you have something that you can see, something that you can touch, it makes it real. You can go back to it. It's a record for you. Put dates down on it. Journal. Journaling is a wonderful practice, and children should journal too. Even if you have a child that isn't a child that's writing yet, you get a little book, something that they like. I have a kiddo that's in love with Pokemon. So I just recently brought him a Pokemon journal. And we're teaching him how to write sentences. So I'm going to ask him in the summertime, how did you feel when you woke up this morning? And I know what the answer is going to be. So I'm going to put a little word bank. I'm still tired. I want to go back to sleep. So things that he can pick out. And this is how you cultivate that as parents to children, how you cultivate being aware of how you're feeling, teaching them that they do have some say in how they feel. Dancing. One of my favorite songs to sway to is Three Little Birds. I love Three Little Birds. I loved it as a little kid. And it's so peaceful. It's very calming. It's very happy. And children and adults can get together on that. And then, of course, worship.
Mm-hmm.
Worship, all things worship. I don't necessarily, if you are feeling really sad in the moment, I would not suggest that you put on one of the older gospel songs that about climbing up the rough side of the mountain, right?
We going in London.
Yeah. But you can rock out to what There's a Miracle in This Room with My Name on it, speaking those things into existence, because our actions follow what we say. So those are all some practical tips that can really help us to acknowledge where we are. We validate our own feelings, but know that you have the power to change your mindset. You have the power to change the course of your life, even with those wounds.
Yes. I love that you threw in them practical steps, y'all. Y'all know we like practical steps here. Yes, and this has been phenomenal. Thank you. So my last question, or I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add, so I will turn it over to you. And that is, where can we or the listeners connect on social media with you? Also, where can they purchase your book? We didn't talk about it and you didn't bring it up, but I know you have a personal practice, Miss Ma'am. So if you want to discuss that a little bit, and then we'll go on from there.
Sure. So I do have a practice. It is Seeds of Our Legacy Counseling and Wellness. And that is the website as well, Seeds of Our Legacy Counseling and Wellness.org. You can look me up there. I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Louisiana. And so if you live in Louisiana and you are looking for someone to help you along the journey, you can hit me up there. As well, I can also provide telehealth. In my book, it is on Amazon. The Lord gave me the vision for that book right after COVID, and I felt that because of the season I was going through as a parent, with someone who has a wealth of knowledge about emotional regulation and inner work, I know that there are lots of other parents who are looking for a way to start this conversation with their children without feeling judged and without being overwhelmed, because there's so much information out there. And so I designed this book to be read with your child so that you guys can bond at the same time while learning how to regulate your emotions.
And the name of the book, one more time, is My Calming Book. I'm Calming Me. It's so good. Now, there was something I knew. I was like, knowing me, I'm going to say last thing, and then there's going to be like two more last things, right? It's like getting out of church. We're going to wrap it up here, and then they keep on going. Okay. So you said you're a licensed, is it Zubini?
Yes. So Zumbini is from the makers of Zumba Fitness and Baby First TV. And it is a program that was started to foster attachment with caregivers and children 0 to 4. And the program is a movement and music program. And so it fosters cognitive development, physical development, social emotional development. And it is a wonderful way to have parents learn how to play again with their small children while emphasizing attachment.
Okay, so good. Now, I didn't hear. Do you want to shout out your social media accounts before we disconnect?
So I don't have a social media account outside of Chivon Gray on Facebook and on Instagram. And I just do all things uplifting. I'm a child of God, and I believe that is how we're going to get through this together. And so you can hit me up there as well as my website.
Okay, y'all. Well, that will conclude this. I am so grateful for your time, your experience, and just your willingness to come on. And I didn't share, but Miss Chivon and I met in a mastermind coaching course. I don't know exactly how we are supposed to advertise it. And I started the podcast since meeting Miss Chivon, and she had hit me up like sidebar, like, I want to get on the couch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect because I was already thinking it. I just didn't take the action. And she was on it. So I'm grateful. Thank you so much for tuning in, but also coming here and sharing your wealth of information with us. And y'all, I'm not live right here, but y'all better put some fire in the comments. Go to her website and follow her on all social media platforms and take advantage of her book on Amazon. Until next time, y'all be blessed. You have anything?
No, I just want you to stay encouraged. This is wonderful. I'm very proud of you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. To God be the glory.
Disclaimer. As a content creator with a background in psychology and ongoing studies, it's imperative that I note and clarify that I am not a licensed professional. The videos and podcasts I produce are intended for educational, entertainment, and transformational purposes only. While I strive to provide accurate information and insights, it's essential to consult with a licensed mental health clinician or a licensed mental health professional for clinical perspectives and personalized advice tailored to your specific needs. Your mental well-being is of the utmost importance to me, and seeking guidance from a qualified provider is encouraged for any concerns or issues that you may be experiencing.